So are you looking to use AI more practically, tangibly, executably? That's probably not a word, with your Amazon selling business? Well, you're going to want to tune in and listen to the rest of what we got going on here because we have the goatee himself when it comes to AI, at least in my opinion, Anthony Lee. Anthony, a pleasure having you today, man.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate your kind words as well.
Dude, at any time I pull up anything, you're there talking about AI, and you make my make.com flows when I play with them and try and see how I can you just put them to shame, man. Like I get through like two or three steps and then you post, screenshots where you have like 98 steps and I'm like, there's no way I can do this. People who don't know you, which I'm shocked if they don't know you, tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you've been, where you are at now, all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. Okay, so I actually started, I guess, my professional career in Amazon. I was selling starting back in 2014. From there, I helped launch one of the biggest like product launch services. Things evolved, and then from there, I ended up working for a little bit with the likes of Helium 10, Canopy Management. These are pretty big names in the space, and spoke on stages about what I particularly specialized in, which was the Amazon algorithm. Interestingly, though, that kind of prepared me for where I am now. When I was working with the algorithm, the biggest thing was how to rank. And there was that time between like 2018, I think, to 2020, where it was all about rebates. So I was one of the people that was building these mini chat bots to facilitate rebates, right? And just getting super advanced in the automations. I started using Make, which at that time was Integromat, to do fancy things like attribution for your ads and stuff. And it was really cool. So I built this, I guess, technical knowledge. And then as time goes on, November 2022, I remember it very well. Make.com opens up an API endpoint with OpenAI's GPT. And I was like, this is next level. And from that moment forward, literally from that moment until today, I have been building and what I call intelligent automations, which just leverage AI in automating various things.
That's super interesting, right? Because right at the turn when AI came out, and obviously AI has been out for longer than we have actually had it for consumer standpoint and that kind of stuff. But since it's come out where we can actually use it, prompt engineering became an actual thing, right? Like before, people were like, prompt engineering, we're just typing words into, an AI. But people really, really underestimate the power from a good prompt, right? Because AI is kind of like a sandbox. It's an open space where you can do anything, and if you tell it to do the wrong thing, it's going to give you the wrong thing. So that's really, really cool. And we're going to touch on that more in a second. But going back to Amazon, and we actually worked at Canopy at the same time too, which is actually really, really funny. So going back to Amazon, anytime someone mentions this phrase in the space, and you know which phrase I'm talking about, I automatically go back to you, and wherever I see people talking about it, I tag you. They owe you some sort of royalty or anything like that. But tell me how you came up with that hypotheses, prediction, what determination for the honeymoon period, which everyone knows about and talks about daily.
Okay. This was a fun time in my Amazon career. So this was after I was working for, it was Zonblast at the time. And I mean, my job was in the thick of just understanding everything, the algorithm, just everything that I possibly could. And I was in Reddit forums and I was in the seller forums, even though I wanted to not be there as often as possible because it's terrible, worse than YouTube comment land. But I was in all of these places just reading like people's experiences. I mean, I was studying what Kindle entrepreneurs were doing to launch back in like 2012, just everything I could. And I remember seeing repeatedly there were people who kept saying my ranking just completely dropped off and I don't know why. My ranking, I lost this many points of rank, I lost this many whatever, like it just kept coming up. And I remember I was on the phone actually with the CEO of Zonblast and I was like, something's weird. I got to check on this. And I had my own products too. And just about this point, they were about 6 months old. So I started looking at whatever like tracked ranking data I could find in my own products and colleagues that would let me look at their stuff. And I started noticing the 6 month mark was when it was like weird and universal. Almost everybody saw a drop in their main keywords. Sometimes only a couple points. Sometimes it was several more than that. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit too coincidental. Like, that's just strange that so many people across categories is discovering this. So I'm on the phone with him and I'm teasing it out in my head. And I'm like, I remember we were talking about stocks at that point, and it just hit me. I was like, wait a minute. So when you're tracking stock movement, if you're a trader, you a lot of times rely on technical indicators, and some of those indicators are moving averages. And I said, what if there's a moving average involved here? And that's when it started to kind of tease out. It's like, okay, what if it has to do with sales? So let's say you have a 6 month benchmark, right? And the overall algorithm is looking at how well your sales were for the past 6 months, but your product isn't 6 months old yet. So that is a null. It's a null. It doesn't count against you. It's not a zero in the average. So you have all of your shorter periods of time where you're running launches and you're doing really well, pushing you up, and then that 6 month mark happens. And all of a sudden, you have all those days that you didn't do so well factored into the average. That became what was the beginnings of the working concept of honeymoon period. That actually it seemed to fit like all the models that not just myself but several other people had built up until Amazon changed the back end keywords. That one, the like the big time when it went from like 2000 characters down to 250 or whatever. That marked when they were moving closer to relevance. And then the honeymoon period effectively changed, right? It became something different. It had more to do with indexed keywords. But in the very beginning, it seemed very predictably to be based on your sales history. And that's where it
So,
came from.
so you mentioned a time frame, which is interesting because I know it is a different time frame. So you had said 6 months, right? But it seems to be that everyone in the industry knows it as 30 days. When have you
Well,
seen?
this was back in 2015. This
Yeah,
was before the shift to relevance.
right. So when it shifted to
So
relevance, then it went to that 30-day mark. Is that the idea?
So I think it fluctuated because it was different periods of time. There was a period when it looked like 2 weeks was done. So I think it fluctuated as it was transitioning there. I haven't monitored that in a while, so I'm not sure. But I take your word for it. It's probably 30 days now. But
That's what
yeah,
everyone, yeah, that's what everyone's seeing right now is the 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, right? So I'm always telling people, previously I came from the agency space, right? Where I noticed a lot of people starting on Amazon doing it themselves, whether they're doing best practice or not, and they're like, man, I'm killing it. Man, I'm doing great. And then after that hump, and they came down, they were like, well, what the hell did I do wrong? Right. So I thought it was super interesting because from an agency space, you had to take people from the downward movement back up. My talk track was always, hey, if you're launching a new product, launch with an agency or launch with best practice to keep that momentum going versus having to dig you out of a hole. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So a lot of people really, really rest on the honeymoon period because it's important to them. A lot of gurus in the space talk about that because you want to take advantage of it. But let me ask you this real quick while we're on the honeymoon period. Some people think, and I don't know, you're probably a better expert in this than I am. If you have a product launch, right? Let's say I launch a product, I have the honeymoon period, it's over, I'm selling the product for 6 months. If I do a color variation in a parentage, right? So let's say that was, a black color, but now I want to twist her together like a pink and a blue. Do those pink and blue child ASINs take a new honeymoon period, or is that over?
So first off, I do want to mention that there are people that are a lot smarter than me that have recently concluded that they see what most people interpret as a honeymoon period now more as a misinterpretation of the way the ranking algorithm works at this time. I still stand on the fact that it was there for a long time, and I even saw it after it shifted to relevance, and it had more to do with keywords because you could actually reset it. Like you could have a 3-month-old listing, you could delete it for 24 hours, bring it back up, and then all of a sudden, oh, hey, those ranking boosts that I saw the first 2 weeks are back. That's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if that stuff works anymore, but if there does appear to still be somewhat of as Leo Scovey, I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name, calls it a cold start period. If the cold start period is still a factor in this, and people are observing that it has the most impact in the first 30 days, as long as it still works by, I guess, the same rules of listing, it should be per listing. So technically, yes. Now, there are other factors specifically for child variations. It is going to draw some of its performance from the parents in the first place. So that is going to impact it, and it might impact it too much where like a seeming cold start period might not have as much of a benefit. I imagine that's probably going to differ based on category because you have a lot of factors that go into categories and how much competition with other categories that has. But yes, technically it has to do with keyword relevance, and keyword relevance is determined by category and then indexed keywords, right?
I always like to ask people, and you're knee deep in the AI space, right? Do you have a preferred go-to, right? Bear with me a second, right? Because a lot of people, I've transitioned out of OpenAI ChatGPT and I've shifted to Claude. There's a reason why I choose Claude over ChatGPT, even though with GPT 4.0 that just came out, I don't pay for it, so I didn't get that rollout yet, even though they said it's free. I'm assuming the paid members get it first over free members. But I figured my $20 a month, right? I want to be able to give it to somebody. So I use Claude over ChatGPT specifically because the output that Claude is giving me, because I'm using it a lot for writing SOPs and writing social posts and all this other kind of good stuff. So I found that again, it could be my prompting, but what do you see? What is your go-to? What's your number two, number three? What are you using every day? Tell me more about that.
Well, I don't have a go-to because it always changes. As soon as a model comes out, it changes. There was a period of time when GPT-4 was the best at everything. And then Claude came out and Claude was better at creative writing. And then Gemini was better at creating words that sounded more human. And like it just rotates. Honestly, I still think like Claude Sonnet is better at translating, and it's also actually a lot better at identifying keywords. But GPT-4 Turbo is better at consistently remembering the prompt and creating large bodies of text, right? So Claude kind of it gets repetitive. It starts kind of freaking out, like, whoa, this is too long, but GPT-4 can do it really well. And then Gemini 1.5, if you give it a huge prompt, it'll create something that still kind of sounds robotic, but it's really good at rewriting. So I use all of them. I don't have a go-to because it always shifts. But from the perspective of like a general consumer, I think probably Claude is the best bet. And the reason why, granted, I pay for ChatGPT, but I only do that because I want to be able to have first access to any new APIs they come out with because they come out with them way more frequently. And I want the API access. And I feel like if I'm a paying per, like usually that means that I'm one of the first in the rollout.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but for the general public, I think Claude, and only because the three models that is currently under Claude 3, they all are so good at different things. If you want to do something like format, right? Really simple, it doesn't need to be creative. Haiku, instantaneous. And you could, HTML table, JSON, spit it out right now. Sonnet, like I said, is really good at translating. It's really good at identifying keywords. And that's stuff that most people might try to use Opus 3 for. And it's like, you don't have to. Sonnet's actually really good at that. And then if you want something more creative, that's when you would use Opus. That's when you want like it to write a letter or pieces of a blog, et cetera, et cetera. And I think just overall, because it can do all those things with three different models that you have access to, then that's probably the better bet.
And it's interesting you say that because I pay for Claude, and I only use Opus, and because I see the other models, and I'm like, oh, are they the free version? Are they like the lesser versions? So it's interesting you say that because I've never actually used Haiku or Sonnet. I've only used Opus, so clearly I'm using it wrong, right? Like I could be.
Well, maybe not. I challenge you though. I challenge you to run this test just to see. Do some keyword analysis, like do keyword extraction, right? I want you to find all of the like latent semantic index keywords you can find in this body of text in this listing. Give it to Opus and give it to Sonnet and see which one performs. And also check out the timing on that too. I just, in my experience, Sonnet's been surprising because it's super fast and it does it really, really well. And sometimes Opus gets hung up, and it's like, because I mean, it's just a lot going on. Like it's a big model. So
Yeah.
I challenge you to run that test just to see.
Oh, challenge accepted for sure, man. The other thing too is I've noticed that I'll bounce. I kind of stay away from GPT for a lot of things. Sorry, OpenAI. But if
Mhm.
I bounce back and forth with certain things, right, I'll go to Gemini because I can easily paste a URL because I don't know why, but I feel like Gemini has better grasp on internet URLs and stuff like that versus OpenAI or Claude. Like if I post a URL in Claude, it like loses its mind. It's like I can't access this, I can't do this. So have you noticed like more tapped into real-time data that's live right now is better with Gemini or
100%, 100%.
yeah.
I will
Okay.
always, it's either going to be Gemini or Perplexity, because Perplexity has that mechanism where it actually like goes into links and kind of scrapes some of the information.
Cool.
Um, as because it's an online model.
Yeah.
Typically, I will use Perplexity a lot, but definitely Gemini. Gemini is my go-to for real-time data. Gemini is also my go-to for anything SEO related. I immediately trust it over other models because I mean, it's Google's,
I
right?
was gonna
Like,
say because it's Google, right? Like that's the way. Have you used Copilot at all? I see a lot of like writers on LinkedIn talking about utilizing Copilot with Microsoft Edge. I can't bring myself to download Edge and use it on my MacBook. I feel like that's like a dirty word. My MacBook might be like, no, we're not doing that. But have you
right?
played with that at all, or is that
Actually, no, I have not. I've always been confused too by this divide between OpenAI and Microsoft products. Like it uses OpenAI stuff, but everybody talks about how the stuff on Azure is different. I don't know though. I don't use Edge either. Like Edge is just not, it's just,
it's just a rebranded Internet Explorer to me, and I just get like flashbacks of just Internet Explorer stuff, right? But then that's interesting too, because then when we're talking about overall, well, let me take a step back a little bit further. So talking about use Make versus things like Zapier, right? Make is your go-to versus Zapier, or do you use them both kind of synchronously? That's not a word, but together.
there's no reason why you would ever need to use both because like literally one is a competitor, a direct
Yeah.
competitor of the other. I just don't use Zapier because Make is less expensive. And I like the interface honestly better. Zapier's more like a almost like a flow chart, step by step, and Make has this drag and drop interface, which I'm like super ADHD, so for me it's like I need that. But yeah, there's no reason to use both. They really do exactly the same thing though. So for people who are like seeing all this Make stuff and going, I don't know how to use Make, I use Zapier, like hands down, they do literally the exact same thing. It just looks different.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I kind of played with both, is that I'm very ADHD like you. Like I need to see, okay, here's this, then this. But with Zapier, and we have an IT team at the company and any other agency I've worked at, and they start saying things like webhooks, and I've seen you post that, and my brain starts to melt inside when I hear that kind of stuff. Like I don't know what's going on. What do you think of companies that are using kind of hidden LLMs, like they're not disclosing what it is? Do you often find that that's an add-on that's not really worth it? Case in point, Notion AI, right? Like Notion has not released who their LLM is. They say it's internal. I've used it before. But what are your thoughts on brands that kind of hide what LLM they're using? Do you find that they're just a rebrand of something else? Do you find that they're worth it for certain things?
I don't honestly trust it. I've had a situation, right, where it was actually like a year ago. Somebody came out and said, we have the most sophisticated long form blog writer tool. And I was really excited. I was like, this could be amazing. And I remember asking, like, what language models do you use? And they just would never answer, like, well, we do use OpenAI's language models, GPT-3, but we also have a couple other ones and it's proprietary. And I was just like, I don't know that you're not like, I wouldn't be able to tell if you were lying to me. And so
Yeah.
I don't really like that, right? Like that bothers me because you could literally just be making it up. You could have because people stretch the truth, especially in tech, right? You can have I've been in meetings where people have had this conversation before where it's like the simplest machine learning algorithm. And they're like, well, I guess technically we could call it AI, right? That's good marketing. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's a stretch. And so I always assume that's what's happening when somebody won't talk about what language models they're using.
Yeah. Like I feel a little AI fatigue, right? Where every tool that I open, every software I open, every website I go to is using AI. And it's like, okay, I can only be using it in so many places. Another case in point, I've switched. Are you a Chrome user or is like Safari guy?
I actually use, first of all, shame on your assumption that I'm an Apple person at all. PC user, and I heavily use both Chrome and Firefox because I have too many tabs open and they all have different profiles. And so I need actually I do have Edge open too, but I don't use it for much. It's just there for when I need like client stuff. Anyway.
So the reason I asked that is because I've gone through so many different use cases for browsers. So I went to Chrome. Chrome's a RAM hog like supremely, right? I'm a Mac user, so I hope we could still talk. But Safari, I'm very deep in the Apple ecosystem, so Safari is very native for sharing things, doing this, doing that, replicating on my iPhone. Um, and then I used to have a lot of things open. So when I was using Safari, I couldn't have my Helium 10 extension, I couldn't have StreamYard extensions, I couldn't do all this kind of stuff. So I found myself using two browsers for two different applications, and that was a pain in the butt. So I recently switched to a new browser. So I don't know if you know about it or not, but have you heard of Arc browser?
I haven't played with it, but I've seen on threads a lot of people talk about Arc. So it's
So
been
I
getting a
use
lot of
Arc.
press.
So the same case that you're talking about having different profiles, you can literally have the browser open and just swipe your mouse over, and you're in a totally new ecosystem. So it's not like Google Chrome with different profiles. It's like real time. This is here. I'm in work mode. I'm in personal mode. I'm in client mode. And the cool thing is it's built on Chromium. So
Okay.
I have all my Chrome extensions in there, but it's snappy like Safari, but it's not a huge RAM hog, which is really really good. So I am a big advocate. I'm on a mission to get everyone switched over to Arc browser. And thanks a lot, Arc browser, for sponsoring this video. No, I'm just kidding. That it. Uh,
I was I
but,
was gonna be like, you
yeah,
did
right.
good there. That was good.
But no, it's definitely real. The reason I say that too is because they do something on their mobile version and their desktop version, which is kind of cool. Um, if you're on the mobile app for Arc and you're on a web page, all you have to do is pinch the screen, just a simple two-finger pinch like that, and their AI, whoever they're using, summarizes the whole page for you within like 3 seconds.
That's
So
dope.
that's super powerful for me because if I'm reading like a TechCrunch article, if I'm reading like a new thing, and I don't want to read it, I don't have time. I got 3 kids. We just got a dog. I'm at PickFu doing all stuff. So if I want to get a quick synopsis of what's going on, I just pinch it, I copy, I save it to an Apple Note, and that's it, and I'm done. So I don't have to bookmark things, save to RSS for reading later. I don't like to do all that kind of stuff because I went down that rabbit hole of RSS feeds and reading things and save it to read it later. And I just never read it later, right? So I think I implore you to check that out again because it's really, really, really something powerful.
All right.
Uh,
I probably will.
your next LinkedIn post is going to be Arc browser is the best thing in the world right now.
Probably.
So tell me a little bit more about where I know you're more in the AI space than the e-com Amazon space right now, but a lot of the things that you're talking about and doing and executing and teaching people is really can go hand in hand with e-com. So what's the best way for the rest of 2024 that you see that Amazon sellers can be using AI in their day-to-day operations? I know a couple of ways I show people, like, hey, I've taken listings, bullet points from listings that are doing 10,000 units a month on Amazon. Their bullet points suck, right? I go here and I say, take a look at this listing, tell me more about the product, and I'll do it manually and go through that. And then I'll say, generate me bullet points that are more SEO focused on this keyword, right? Because I see a lot of brands talking about their brand story in their bullet points. No one's going to rank for your brand story information like, oh, I started this company when I was 10 years old. No one's searching that kind of stuff, right? And they're not using all the characters you could be using in the space. So I show people how to do that, right? Which is super powerful for SEO. But what do you think people could be using AI for better in the Amazon space?
Well, you probably just illustrated the one of the best use cases, but I would also say business intelligence. Like it's really good at crunching data and then giving you either assessments or predictions. So one of my favorite is definitely review assessment, right? I mean, that's so powerful. If you can get a large body of reviews and give it to a language model and say, like if I believe if you're paying for Claude, then you have access to the 200,000 token window, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you can fit a lot of reviews in there and, put them in like a CSV and load it as a document and then and ask like this is what I want. I want a sentiment analysis. I want you to point out the most commonly used phrases. That's super powerful for listing optimization. Like if you use the same words that buyers use, that's huge. I want you to tell me, the top three things people complained about, the top three things people boasted about. And then you could even ask it like, give me like try to glean from the information demographic information, right? Like if they mention anything about having kids, about being in college, like get all that information and then build me a customer profile, build me an avatar. And it can do that instantaneously. Like, well, Opus probably takes a couple of minutes, but like it'll do it in less than 5 minutes.
Oh
You're
no, a couple
literally
of minutes for the robots to do my job, right? Like people, I find that a lot of people are very like instant gratification as we propel forward in the AI space. Like people are like, oh my God, I gotta wait 30 seconds for it to spit out all this work that I could have done manually. You know what I mean?
right.
But that's super powerful that you say that. What's the best way, kind of pivoting back, for people to kind of scrape that data? Do you find that you're just gonna have to copy and paste into a CSV or PDF, or do you,
No,
or
I do a Helium 10 export.
oh, just for the reviews, just export the whole thing? I didn't even know
So
it does that.
with the free account, the Chrome extension, you can actually export it. It ends at 100. You only have 100 reviews, but this is the hack. You do it by you filter first by star rating, and then you get 100 of each, right? So do 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. So you'll have up to 500 reviews that way. And yeah, it spits it out in a CSV.
Is that per ASIN, or is that like if I go to another ASIN, can I do that again?
Mhm.
Dude, that's gold.
Yeah, it really is.
That's
It's
awesome.
that's always. I mean, I'm sure like you could probably search for review extractor, tools or APIs or whatever, but I've always
Yeah.
just used the Helium Chrome extension because it's just easy, right?
Dude, that's a great like hack for sure. Do you have anything built out for these kind of flows in like make.com that people can kind of consult with you on or anything like that that can really affect like Amazon, directly their business? Like, because I know you're doing your own thing right now with AI. So how can people really tap into you as a source and a consultant for this kind of stuff?
Well, I actually have built a couple of flows. I have a little Amazon bundle that I added to the stuff, and it's mostly business intelligence, like the review thing I just talked about, and then um, uh, I do listing optimizer too.
Oh, nice.
It's similar to, the way that you described it, but how mine's set up is it uses competitors as kind of the standard based on your category, right? So it uses an API that scrapes competitor data, goes into your category or for your keyword and looks at what's ranking and then uses that. And it's like, this is the template, right? So these are the top 5 competitors. This is their titles, their title length. These are bullets. These are descriptions.
Oh,
This
wow.
is the template. Now write my listing.
So if someone goes with that flow with you and purchases it from you, do I have to have any sort of paid models or no?
It uses APIs. So you have to have, uh, whatever language model you're going to use, which I believe those are typically GPT, but it's easy to, I guess, migrate those to whatever. You have to have an account with a large language model that has access to your credit card because you have to pay for the tokens.
Got it. So you have to have a paid account, and all that kind of stuff, and then they can kind of tap into that. So what do you know of PickFu, and how have you seen it affect people in all of your years, either in the e-com space or not so much in AI, right? But technically, there's a lot of things. People kind of have this misconception that, PickFu is, oh, I A/B test my main image, this or that. Like we're rock stars at that. I mean, we recently spoke with Clayton at Carbon 6, and he was talking about how his backpack is better than his coworkers, and they use a PickFu for something like that. So tell me what you know about PickFu and how you've kind of seen it.
So my knowledge of PickFu is limited to the very specific Amazon A/B test stuff. I'm happy to hear that they've made it super easy to do all kinds of things, but my knowledge ends there. That's what I saw everybody using it for. Specifically, while I was working at Helium 10, I remember Bradley was a huge fan of PickFu, like huge. He talked about it all the time. I've seen it in action too. I've seen the results and I don't know if it started that way, but I remember when specifically choosing from an Amazon audience was became an option.
Yep.
That was really cool. So yeah, we had pretty much every seller in the office used PickFu as kind of like part of their SOP, right? So it's just like rather than, and obviously this was also before manager experience experiments, which I know like now some people are advocating for because it's direct to Amazon, whatever. I'm pretty sure PickFu is faster though. But but yeah, like back then that was part of the SOP. Like everybody was like, all right, we do this, we do that, and then we're gonna PickFu our main, pretty much the main image almost always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes the title,
Yeah.
but for the most part that was it, right? And then once we have a winner, then we move forward, and like that was
Yeah.
what everybody did.
So it's super interesting because a lot of people, like you said, stay at the main hero image, but we're doing photo stack, we're doing this competitor, that competitor, we're doing SERP heat map click test, right? So you could upload an image of a SERP result, right? And just say, based on this, where are you gravitated to click on more? So if you're in the melatonin gummy space and you're inundated with purple all over the SERP, right? Maybe you don't want to be purple because maybe you want to be pink. I don't know, something a little bit different to gravitate for those kind of clicks. So we're doing a lot of that. And you had mentioned too, like the drill down for the traits and characteristics of an Amazon Prime seller. We have like 90 plus. So if you're selling women's multivitamins for over 40 that are on Amazon in the Midwest that are over $100,000 in income, you could specifically target all the way down. So the respondents are only those people. Because if it's a women's multivitamin for women over 40 that make, under 50,000 a year, that have 3 kids, you don't want my opinion on your product because I'm not your avatar, I'm not your ICP. So I think that, me being here at PickFu, I'm rolling out more content to show people how they can do it. But I know we're both on LinkedIn and we always post a lot. I'm tapping into the LinkedIn audience too, where I'm like, they're putting a lot of their creatives up there for their profile header, their main photo. You could pick through that if it
Mhm.
resonates enough, because a lot of creative people on LinkedIn and these gurus and these agencies on LinkedIn are like, no, your profile main banner image has to say this keyword for people to click on. It has to say this. Well,
Or the
duh.
text needs to be oriented over here, or
Back.
yeah, there's a ton of advice, but there's never been any like numbers to back up what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. And then lastly, when you said manage experiments on Amazon, it's a very powerful tool, right? But 50% of the time you're going to lose. Like that's so do you want to test by losing or test before you invest? So that's a big push that I'm saying to a lot of PPC agencies, full service agencies, like manage your experiments is good, but you're going to lose 50% of the time. It's better to
Hmm.
have that data. And I know you're a big geek of data, just like us, right? You want to have that data before so you can kind of pivot and move forward. But
Definitely.
Anthony, it's been awesome, man. I love speaking. I always feel smarter after I'm done talking to you, man. That's just so. How can people reach out to you? How can they get involved in you? Where should they go? What should they do? What's the next? Are you speaking anywhere soon? Are you doing anything? Tell me more.
No, I'm actually not. It's just I am working with a big like production agency to it looks like we're going to develop a course. Like this decision was just made a couple days ago.
Ooh,
I'm not a course guy, but he was like, "Look, you have a lot to give and I can make it look really good." And we talked and he convinced me to consider it and then I decided, yeah, this would be a cool venture. So I believe that there'll be a course soon. It's going to be AI and automation, intelligent automation, the whole thing. But that's like months away.
sure. But for right now,
Yeah,
how could someone? Is LinkedIn best way to reach you? Do you have a site, email? Like what's best way? Because
yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
people watching this are going to want to be like, oh my God, I want that flow.
Sure. AI+automation.com is my website, right? So clever. I try to make it as easy as possible. AI+automation.com. And then outside of that, yeah, LinkedIn is where I've been the most. I mean, if you want to see like me make silly videos in these glasses,
Oh, there they are.
you can
Perfect.
find me on Instagram. I put all my reels there with the glasses on. The AI marketer guy, but otherwise, LinkedIn is the place where I'm spending most of my time these days.
I was waiting for the AI, waiting for the shutter shades to come out. That was fantastic, man. But Anthony, listen, man, I really appreciate you hopping on, and I hope you come back to as the AI landscape evolves. I'm sure to pick your brain on LinkedIn a little bit more. But thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.